Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chiefly Football Podcast. I am the underqualified host, Kinloch. Thankfully, I'm joined by two other diehard Chiefs fans, Stayton and Dave. We actually have a fourth member, Marcus. He was unable to attend today. Stayton broadcasting from Salt Lake City, Utah. Me and Dave from the Heart of Chiefs Kingdom, just outside of Kansas City. Stayton, why don't you just introduce yourself for a brief second?
My name is Stayton. I'm very humbled to have this opportunity to talk to you guys about football, especially the Chiefs. I am a 3-time fantasy football league champion. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me some questions in the comments on Facebook or on Instagram. And I'm very excited to have another season back here with Chiefly Football, and I can't wait to see what the season holds for us.
Great. Thanks, Dan. We appreciate you being here, taking time from the beautiful, scenic Utah. So, Dave, how are you doing today?
You know, it's we're ready for football to get started. It took a long time to get over that loss the last time we saw the Chiefs in a live football game. And I think that bad taste is finally washed away, and we can get renewed in a new season and just looking forward to Friday. I don't know the last time I was this excited for an exhibition game, and just to see those boys in red, and let's get this new season underway.
Yeah. So my name's Kinloch, and I also am super excited for the Chiefs game this week. It was obviously a different kind of season last year, not having preseason games. So I never liked preseason games. I thought they were boring. You never got to see the players that you wanted to see. But I mean, now we see how important the backup players are after what happened in the Super Bowl with our offensive line struggling with a bunch of backups. So I think, this season more than ever, I'm more excited to see kind of the depth that we can add. We have some exciting new rookies that can fill some holes that we had in our team from last season. Extremely excited to see the preseason games. And honestly, I think I'm a little bit more excited to see the backups than the starters, just because I know what we got with the starters, but I want to see who can contribute to the team this year, who didn't contribute last year, or who improved from last season. And then Stayton, congratulations on your 3 fantasy football titles. I would like to say that I was not in your league for any of those 3, because the last time we were in a league together 2 years ago, I won that league title. So we're going to be in a league together again this season. Dave and Marcus are going to be joining us. So very excited for that season to begin as well, and maybe a little bit of trash talking and some fantasy advice on this podcast. So stay tuned for that. All right. So it's been a couple months since our last podcast. Dayton and I broke down the draft and free agency. So now we're 2 weeks into training camp. We got our first preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers on Saturday. And we're getting reports out of training camp up in St. Joseph. And Marcus was actually able to go up there and get some pictures and do some scouting on our team. All right. So what are some things that you guys are hearing out of camp? Are there any people that you've heard are standing out? Stan, let's start with you.
Well, yeah. So a couple of the big names are names that we kind of expected to see. Nick Bolton has made a lot of great plays with his instincts, especially with some of the injuries that have happened in our linebacker core with Ben Neiman and Anthony Hitchens. He's been able to get more playing time with the first stringers. Even gotten some experience calling the plays, which is hopefully what his role will be when he gets comfortable enough in that defense. But yeah, he's made a lot of great plays. We all saw the video of when He intercepted Patrick Mahomes and ran it back for a touchdown. Obviously, it was a 7-on-7, so it's not quite game simulation, but it's those instincts and that leadership that we drafted him for, and it's great to see that it's already starting to peek through in training camp. Another big name, Kinloch, that I know you were excited to see get some time on the field is Noah Gray. That I think is our 5th-round pick, our tight end out of Duke, I believe. And I mean, and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce have already commented on the skill set that he already has, just as a playmaker. Patrick Mahomes says he already has those veteran skills that are, comparable to what we love so much about Travis Kelce, about just finding ways to get open, and being on the same page as the quarterback. And so that's one of the bigger names that we've heard coming out of training camp, and that's really exciting because having Travis Kelce nearing, getting a little bit older, it's good to know that he's going to have a year or two, or I mean, however long we have him, to be able to mentor this young tight end and really help the Chiefs' future continue to grow. And then the last name, obviously, that I've been really excited to hear about is Willie Gay. If you have been a fan of our podcast, you know how much I love Willie. I think that he has a lot of potential, and I think that we all started to see that towards the end of the season. With the increased snaps that he was getting and the playing time that he was receiving with Spagnuolo's defense. But yeah, I mean, having, like you said earlier, Kinloch, this offseason and being able to actually train with the team and being in person and learning from the coaches in person and seeing everything in person, it's really helped Willie improve his understanding. I mean, we already know that he's had the natural ability the natural athletic ability to play football. It's great to see that he's learning, and he actually got to pick an interception off of Patrick Mahomes as well. So I'm really excited to see how he progresses, not only through training camp, but into the year, and to see how much of a difference he can make on that defense.
Yeah. So you just mentioned that Nick Bolton and Willie Gay Jr., a rookie and a second-year player, both intercepted Patrick Mahomes during practice. Are we concerned? Is that a red flag about Patrick Mahomes going into this coming season?
No.
Did you seriously just ask that question? I think that's one of the things. That's one of the problems with the flip side of training camp, right? When people are working on things, then any event on its own can take a life of its own. For instance, Patrick Mahomes throwing an interception. I think most of that have attributed to, the receivers running wrong routes. But I don't think in a practice environment that we can extrapolate a lot of information. When I hear somebody's had a bad practice, we don't know what they're working on or what they're being asked to do, or because that's the time when they're learning, right? So maybe they're being asked to do something that they're still on the process of learning, and so the results that we're going to see aren't going to be a true reflection of what we're going to see, at the start of the season. So it's no different than when you take a pitcher in spring training and he's trying to work on his fastball and always throwing his fastballs and he's getting rocked and everybody's questioning his ability. So yeah, I wouldn't take anything that we get from the media, because they're such under a microscope and they're trying to make deadlines that they'll make stories out of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that statement, because I remember a couple of days ago there was a video that came out with Chris Jones going up against Joe Tooney in one-on-one drills, and Joe Tooney, he was getting manhandled pretty well by Chris Jones. But Mitch Schwartz actually commented and said that you can't judge a player's performance based on these one-on-ones, especially in training camp, because you don't know what little things the players are specifically focusing on. And so, yeah, just like David said, we don't know exactly what they're trying to practice and improve on. So you can't just look at a single performance, especially in training camp, and say, oh, this is how this person's going to perform in the regular season.
Right. Especially, with linemen in the one-on-ones, the advantage goes to the defense every single time. I mean, you hear it when, during the combine, they do one-on-one drills like that, and some people don't look good on the offensive side, but it's just, I mean, especially if you're an interior lineman, you're never working one-on-one with people. You usually have another person next to you who's able to help. So your fundamentals are going to be different than going one-on-one with somebody. And there's so much more space when it's one-on-one than when you're crammed together in the trenches. So yeah. So
I heard a great interview today earlier with Sean Barber, former linebacker for the Chiefs, and that was one of the things that he talked about specifically is the offensive line is really the one area in football that they work as a unit. Typically, while people might look at them individually, they're really judged as a unit because, just as you said, Kinloch, really on any given assignment, there's a role and there's help. There's a purpose of what they're doing. Unlike a receiver or a tight end, when they're running a specific, they have to do things on their own to get open or to create leverage and things like that. Whereas, the offensive line truly is working together, and so when you isolate them, that's not a true reflection of a typical game day experience that they're going to be a part of.
yeah. Well, and that being said, I'd heard reports and I'd seen some videos of Trey Smith, our rookie 6th-round pick out of Tennessee. And we talked about Smith quite a bit in the offseason episode that we did. Obviously, he had blood clots while he was in college. He was a very highly recruited player. I think he was the number 1 overall prospect in that class. So he had a ton of talent and actually played well at Tennessee, just had the injury problems, ended up slipping despite his round 1 or round 2 talent to the 6th round. So he's looked really good in camp. And there were videos circulating about him one-on-one with Chris Jones and some of our best defensive linemen, and he was winning, showing his strength. So if you see one-on-one and you see an offensive player doing really well because they're disadvantaged, that's a good sign. So normally they're going to have some help, but if the offensive player is able to kind of handle some of our defensive players one-on-one, that's a pretty good sign. So Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, our 2nd-round pick out of Oklahoma, our center, getting all the reps with the first-team offense. And Lucas Niang is in a neck-and-neck battle for the right tackle spot with Mike Remmers, who's returning from last season. Lucas Niang,
who's currently out right now.
Yes, yeah. So Niang's getting some really valuable reps right now with the first team. He took last season off because of COVID. So this is basically his rookie season. And it's going to be his first full season training with the Chiefs. I mean, just like all the other rookies last season, he was able to do a lot of the online things, but actually being on the field with the team this season is going to be great. And so, all the reports coming out are that all 3 of them are doing extremely well. Humphrey and Smith are actually considered locks to be starting week 1, especially because Trey Smith is battling for that right guard position, being a lot of hype. They say that he's doing extremely well. Chris Jones has said that he's his favorite lineman to go up with. He sees all the potential and just he's a massive human being. So I'm really excited to see our offensive line. And that's what I'm looking for on Saturdays, to see how our rookies do. I mean, on the other side, we have Joe Tooney, a big signing, and then Orlando Brown Jr., the big trade that we got. The player that we got from the Ravens. So completely revamped offensive line. And just the fact that we're seeing 3 rookies who have the potential to be starting week 1 and that they're looking good in camp. I'm really excited to see what they can do on Saturday.
Yeah. I think that's kind of when you ask Stayton about what he's excited to be honest, I'm excited to see everybody that we're hearing about. There's a lot of talk about the safety, Devin Key, the undrafted free agent, and that he's really, moving up and they're referring to him as a baller. Just as you said, that whole right side of the offensive line, even somebody like McCall Hardman, who, this is his third year, but again, the second year, he didn't have the opportunity to have those OTAs and training camp. So it'll be interesting to see what type, where he is in his learning curve. And we're hearing a lot of good things about all these players. But I just question, how much is the bubble that we live in? And, and that's why I'm a big fan of these guys. Even our starters getting in there and starting this first quarter, because everything looks great on paper and everything can look great on paper, on the practice field. But let's see what happens when live bullets are flying.
Right. All right. And then a couple other players I kind of wanted to hit on. Mike Hughes, we traded for him. He came from the Vikings. He's competing with, a couple other players for the second cornerback position. Right now, L'Jarius Sneed is looking like the clear-cut number one cornerback, but I think they actually want him playing in the slot at least in the nickel packages, when we have multiple cornerbacks out there, they want him in the slot. They don't necessarily want him on the outside. And then in base packages, it looks like just because of, he's so much better than everybody else right now that they're keeping him outside. So it's really just a competition. On the other side, Strawberrius Ward is probably the favorite. And then Mike Hughes and DeAndre Baker are two young players, both former first-round picks who kind of disappointed on their previous teams. DeAndre Baker played really well, I thought, in the Week 17 game before shattering his leg. And then Mike Hughes, he's actually been lining up with Tyreek Hill most of the time. They say that he's really the only one with the speed right now to keep up with Tyreek Hill, which I think is promising. If you can keep up with Tyreek Hill, then you can keep up with anybody else. So those are two of the players I'm really looking forward to see, because I think if we can get close to their potential that they had as first round picks coming out, if Sam Madison, our defensive backs coach, and Steve Spagnuolo can get the best out of those two players, then, we don't have to be worrying about cornerbacks. Like it feels like we do every year, like, oh, we don't have good enough cornerbacks. And Beach consistently is like, we'll build the front seven, whatever we got in the back half will make do. And a lot of the players end up stepping up. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And then Juan Thornhill also coming back from an injury 2 years ago. But last season, it just didn't seem like he was back to the player that he can be and should be. We saw him come on at the end. For some reason, he did not play very much in the Super Bowl. And I think that hurt the Chiefs defensively. But he says that he's feeling so much better this year. Everybody's saying that he's looking faster and looking more like himself. So that's who I'm really excited to see. Just our defensive backs, how they come together on top of the offensive line.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, remember last year Tyrann Mathieu talked about coming back from ACL, and he certainly has experiences, that experience of overcoming that. And he noted that, it took him 2 years to come back, to really feel comfortable the second year after the surgery. So, I think while we see Thornhill out there running around last year and didn't see the player that we saw before his injury, I'm gonna take what Tyrann said and from his experience that we should see a different Thornhill this season than last year.
Yeah, and something, one of the big stories coming out of camp this year is Chris Jones. Obviously, he's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, second only, I would say, to blanking on his name from the Rams, Aaron Donald. Just because Aaron Donald is far and away probably the best player at his position, any position. So, but Chris Jones, elite defensive tackle, elite pass rusher, and right now the Chiefs are giving him a lot of reps at defensive end opposite Frank Clark. Chris Jones said that he lost a little bit of weight and has been doing a lot of yoga to work on his flexibility in the offseason. And people are excited about what Chris Jones can do on the outside, especially now that we signed Jaron Reed, who is a really, really good defensive tackle who can kind of fill in for Chris Jones and not make the defense worse. So, Stan, what are your thoughts on Chris Jones playing on the outside? Do you think he can do it?
Yeah, I think. I think it's hard for fans to understand how much of a difference it is to be playing on the inside compared to the outside on defensive line. But I think if anyone can, I think Chris Jones's length. If you just watch him go up against linemen, like his arms are just so long. I think that's going to be a huge asset for him on the outside. And I know a lot of people are arguing that getting pressure up the middle is a lot more important than, and is quite a lot harder, as we've talked about earlier. The interior linemen are, they're facing multiple offensive linemen. But I think that we have very solid interior defensive linemen, right? We have Noddy, we have Jaron Reed that you just talked about. We have Colin Sanders. I think we have a lot of great interior linemen that can, not necessarily like blow up the middle, but they can make sure that you're not doing anything up the middle. And I think that having Chris Jones on the outside, or even if you're not just focusing him on the defensive end, just knowing that you can move him out and kind of keep offensive linemen on their toes as to when he's going to be on the defensive end or on back in the tackle position, I think is a really big factor to take in when it comes to game planning and everything like that. Because if a team has a weak offensive tackle in a certain position, throwing Chris Jones out there could be a lot more effective than just keeping him in the middle.
Yeah, I really like the idea of having Chris Jones on the outside, and it seems like, and I would recommend personally, that Chris Jones play defensive end on first and second down when the teams are more likely to run, and then moving back into defensive tackle on passing situations, because the defensive ends that we have right now, we drafted Josh Kando, who's very athletic, but he's probably limited right now in his run defense. We had Taco Charlton, who was really good, but again, I think he's more of like a pass rushing specialist right now. And then we also re-signed, his name.
Okafor,
thank you. Who's, I think, just a little bit up there in age, very reliable, I would say, a little bit injury prone, and just doesn't give you the upside that Chris Jones has. But I think if you put Chris Jones on the outside, bigger body, he can help against the run on early downs, and then move him inside where he's at his best as a pass rusher, and you can bring in one of your pass rushing specialists at defensive end, so that there's not a lot of pressure on those defensive ends to be a run stopper and a pass rusher when it might not be in their repertoire right now. So I just think that the flexibility that being able to play Chris Jones on the outside and and of course on the inside gives so many more options for Spagnuolo to bring pressure and to cause havoc with the defensive side.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of pressure up the middle. But I appreciate what both of you are saying. I like the idea. I like the idea. When we signed Reed, I envisioned he and Jones up the middle, constantly moving quarterbacks off their spot. And if that were the case, then you don't even have to have elite defensive ends. If those two are running that quarterback out to them, then that would enable them to make more plays. But Kinloch, just as you mentioned, the ability to stop the run as well. I think it's the big thing is, how will Chris Jones do as a defensive end? He played quite a few percentage of snaps in defensive end anyway last season, so it's not going to be completely out of the realm of what we've seen. And that he's going to be hungry going against a tackle rather than interior lineman trying to get to the quarterback. So, and maybe the middle rush isn't as vital in today's game when you have such athletic quarterbacks who, are look to be playmakers,
Yeah.
Look to get outside of the pocket and move. That's one of the things we're excited to see, right? Is how this experiment works.
Absolutely. And Stayton, I kind of want to touch on something that you talked about with Nick Bolton and Willie Gay, but mostly Willie Gay. Um, just talking about how last season was such a tough offseason for him as a rookie, just because we mentioned earlier there weren't a lot of he didn't really get many reps. There was limited training camp. Most of his stuff was online. Didn't get any preseason games. Played a little bit in the middle and a lot more towards the end of the season before he got hurt. And a lot of us, I think, were frustrated and wondering why he wasn't playing. But he ended up saying like he didn't know the playbook. I mean, you can see it when you're like reading it, but it's all about the reps and being able to go out and do it yourself. And Spagnuolo has a pretty sophisticated defense, and when he's expected to be able to know all those calls as a linebacker, it was really tough for him. So he talked about how he just didn't have any confidence or much confidence last year, and that was a new thing for him, just because he's always been confident in his ability and his knowledge up until that point. So he just felt like he was a little slow in reacting and not necessarily knowing where to be. And I think that's encouraging, because last year we saw that, especially towards the end when he got a little bit more playing time, is that sometimes he didn't take the best path to the ball, or he was a little late in reacting, but he was so athletic that he was able to go make plays, and he was always close. It was just, if he had just gotten a split second earlier in reacting and recognizing certain plays, that he can be a huge difference maker on the defensive side. And the fact that he talked about how much more comfortable and confident he was getting this full off season and full training camp and OTAs to learn the defense and to get the reps. I'm really excited for this linebacker core with him and Nick Bolton. Stan, you talked about Nick Bolton and the progress that he's making, but just the athleticism that those two can bring is so different than what we've had the last few years. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off Chris Jones at the defensive end position if he's struggling, or if we have to put somebody else out there, the younger players. If we have linebackers who are athletic enough to go sideline to sideline and make plays, use their athleticism to maybe make up for some of the mistakes that happen up front, then there's a lot of safeguards on this defense. I think we have a great defensive line. I think that's probably the strength of our defense. But if they mess up, if we have a solid athletic linebacking core that can make up for some of the missed plays, then that would be awesome. And then having a great front seven obviously takes pressure off our secondary while they're still trying to figure things out. All right. Have any of you guys heard anything about Jerick McKinnon?
Just the only thing I've really heard about him is that he's got speed. That's really the only thing I've heard about him. And you can never have too much speed on a team. So
yeah, I've basically all the reports that I've seen is just, people are surprised and excited about how electric he is. And they're very hopeful about the change of pace that he can bring to CEH or behind CEH. And they say that he's just the perfect running back for this offense. Fast, agile, catches well, and has experience. He played for the 49ers, although he was hurt for most of the time, then had a great run with the Vikings before. So I think he was kind of brought in as like a surprise, let's see if he can make the team. But I think he really does have a chance of actually winning the number 2 job behind CEH. So I'm excited to see what he can do on Saturday. Is there anybody else you guys wanted to bring up before we wrap this up?
Probably CEH, right? To see what he's going to do. Again, he had the same issues, but especially on the offensive side, which, we all know the depth of Vandy's playbook. So, for him to have a full season with OTAs and training camp, he was learning on the fly last season and had a lot of high expectations, but now suddenly you've got an offensive line that's built different than our previous offensive lines. So I would anticipate that we'll have the opportunity to be more successful on the ground on a continued basis. And what I mean successful is when they know we're going to run. I think probably our best game last year with regards to the run was against Buffalo, and nobody anticipated that we were just going to pretty much run that game, especially the Bills. But it seemed when teams knew we were going to run, we had a hard time, gaining yards. And this definitely looks more like a powerful, offensive line that can, you know, create that option for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited for CEH. I think the biggest thing that he probably still needs to work on, as far as from what I've heard and what we saw last year, which is his pass blocking, being able to pick up those responsibilities. But again, those are things that you have to be learning while you're, I think the off season goes a long way in teaching a player that, because they have to be super familiar with the protection calls and what the responsibilities are. They have to go against a variety of different pressures to see what they can do. I'm hoping that CEH is able to develop that. Just, I don't know. I mean, he's pretty small. So, I mean.
Yeah, but like they said, from a running back's position, it's all about attitude, right? That's what, whether it was Marcus Allen or, any of those players that were considered finesse, it was attitude. It was the want to.
Right.
Daryl Williams wants to.
Yeah, probably a little bit easier to want to when you're that big, though.
Yes, it is.
I think CEH is just going to want to cut people.
Well, you know what? That's what Marcus Allen did, right? When they came in, he went at the knees, and that slows people down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you got to do. When you have Patrick Mahomes back there, you just got to slow him down for a second to give Patrick Mahomes time to get out and go make some plays. But yeah, definitely excited to see CEH. Let's hope that he can be more incorporated in the offense. I don't think we got to see him in the passing game as much as.
Is there any reason that you don't think he will take a step forward?
No, actually, I think he's going to be a lot better, but especially in the run game, mostly because of the offensive line. I think the offensive line last year was one of the worst run blocking offensive lines in football,
which they weren't built for, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, not going to necessarily fault them for that. That's just how the team was built. But I mean, this year Trey Smith is known for being a mauler. Like, he loves to run block. He loves to pound people into the ground. That's what he likes to do. And the same with Orlando Brown when he played with the Ravens and did a really great job, Pro Bowl offensive tackle, and that team just runs the ball all the time. So, so I'm really excited to see what our offensive line can do. I think that they're going to bring a brand new attitude and a new style to this offense. And if they can,
we're all new, that's for sure, right?
Yeah. So, super excited for that. Stayton, is there anything you wanted to add before we sign off? You look very comfortable with your blanket on, even though you have a ceiling fan on at the same time.
No, yeah, just to, kind of back what you guys said, I think that the offensive linemen, we could potentially not have any starting linemen back from last year, right? Starting on the offensive line this year. And so it'll be very interesting because I know that one of the biggest things in sports in general, and in football, but especially for the offensive line is communication, because as we were talking about earlier, they're really the only group on the field that works as a team. And so it'll be very interesting to see how quickly these guys can get on the same page. Most of them being new, I think we only have like 3 or 4 returning linemen that have actually played with the Chiefs. And so it'll be interesting to see how quickly we can get these offensive linemen to gel together and work together to protect our most valuable piece of equipment out there, Mr. Patrick Mahomes.
Piece of equipment.
our most valuable chess piece. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. One other person I wanted to speak about before we close the podcast, this episode off, is Cornell Powell. I know that he was a big name that I was looking forward to watching progress in training camp and everything. And what has been reported so far is that he's not quite up to where we're wanting him to be. But I think that, but I don't want fans to panic too quickly, because I have huge expectations for this guy. Like, I've seen how athletic and how strong he is, and the length that he has, and how he can kind of bring a different dynamic to our wide receiver core. But Bieniemy talked about it as well in a recent interview. This offense is just a very difficult offense for wide receivers to learn, because they have to know how to do so much. And we're seeing that all with McCole Hardman, right? It's his third year, and we're hoping that this is the year where he really gets to understand his role and what he does on offense. And so I just hope that fans out there aren't getting too I know he's a 6th round pick or whatever, so maybe no one had too many high expectations for him. But I think that as the season goes on, as Cornell Powell, gets to where we want him to be, I think he'll be a great force on the field for us.
Yeah, I appreciate you for pointing that out, just because I think a lot of people, even when McCole Hardman was drafted, he was drafted in the 2nd round. I think people had super high expectations for him coming out. And he took a while to be able to contribute as an actual wide receiver. I mean, they used him for gadget plays, and he was actually fairly efficient and effective in the times that he actually got the ball. But it's the wide receiver position, especially in Andy Reid's offense, you have to know all the different positions. And it's not just, hey, go get open with this route. It's not just about getting open. It's getting open the way that you're supposed to, because the play is designed for a purpose. It could be setting up future plays, future variations of the play. It could be, setting up another receiver route, maybe setting up another receiver to get the ball. So it's not just, hey, on this play, I'm going to run this route and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get open. It's, I have to do this a certain way because there's a higher purpose to what I'm being asked to do. And I think it takes a certain level of maturity to understand that. And I think it just takes some time for receivers to really understand the deeper meanings behind the offensive playbook and why Andy Reid is calling certain things. And so I think we need to practice some patience with Cornell Powell and kind of focus a little bit more this season on McCole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson and see what they can do to kind of fill in that void left by Sammy Watkins. And I think Noah Gray coming in, and I don't know if you guys have heard all the great things that they're talking about Jody Fortson, the wide receiver turned tight end, who's
20 pounds of added muscle.
Yeah. I mean, everyone says that he's balling out. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. I think, as far as Andy Reid talked about how he's going to be playing this first preseason game, first string, the starters are going to be playing the first quarter, second string, second, third string, third, so on. So we should be able to get a full quarter of seeing each of these players. So Jody Fortson and Noah Gray being able to see what they can do to add more weapons to the offense, even with questions behind Tyreek Hill at wide receiver.
Which there are a lot of questions.
There are, yeah. So I think again they're just kind of spreading out maybe a little bit of the pressure this season with having some good tight ends to help out, bringing in Jerick McKinnon, who can also play wide receiver, pretty well. He's got that skill set. So, maybe this season we run the ball a lot more and we do more 2-back sets and we're throwing more out of the flat and getting the ball in our running backs' hands. And there's not as many 4 receiver sets as we're used to seeing. I don't know. I think Andy Reid he can do it. He can do it all. So he's always going to tailor the playbook and the offensive plays to the strengths of his team. So yeah. It might look different than what it looked like over the past couple of years, but I think it's going to be just as effective, and it might even throw other teams off because they're not used to seeing that same thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys had read, but the running backs have actually been working with the wide receiver coach. So they're really trying to elevate the receiving back game. So I'm really excited to see what what Andy has planned, because if you're having your running backs focus on running routes and with like wide receivers, then I think there'll be a lot of fun plays to watch this year.
Well, and I think that's what, that was the other thing I was thinking about. What Stayton brought up actually is Greg Jennings is now the running backs coach. And he was prior wide receiver coach. He played wide receiver for the Packers. So I'm curious to see, what our running game looks like, because you're moving somebody from, a coach from a different role, which is not uncommon, right? As they kind of move into, into growth, but for a wide receiver coach to move over to the running back and get in the running back room, especially after you had Eric Bieniemy in there, for a couple of years previously. And yeah, so this is for a team that's setting up to go to the Super Bowl for a third time. There's a lot of new things to be excited about.
Yeah. So obviously we're super excited for this first preseason game on Saturday against the 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to be able to give us some good looks. They're a good team. I think they've got some great depth. So we'll be able to, it's not like we're going to be going against the Bengals or the Jaguars and playing against high school kids and their fourth string. I think we're going to get some good reps. I haven't heard about, any injuries. I don't know if D Ford or Nick Bosa or any of their star players are going to be playing in the game, but that would be some good opportunities especially for our rookies to go against some of the stars that they have on the defensive side of the ball. And they have Trey Lance, their rookie quarterback, who's getting a lot of hype in San Francisco, and he's an athletic guy and got a big arm. So, testing our defense with his skill set, the athleticism of our linebackers and the discipline of our defensive backs. So I think it's just really, really excited for the season to start. Really excited to get our first taste of live Chiefs football this weekend. What are you guys' plans for watching the game? Dave, that was an invitation for you to invite me over.
Oh, right on. Yeah. It's funny. I was listening there on talk radio, trying to get, all the information I can, just get my Chiefs fix. And they were asking, or they made it sound like, who's going to actually watch the Chiefs full game. And I'm like, I'm totally going to watch this game to its entirety, because I'm as interested in the 53rd player as I am, in watching Mahomes for that quarter. There's just so many things that we've heard that I'd like to see out there, and just see, have we, are we a better team than we were last year? Or are we going to see teams starting to catch us? And while we can't look at those teams right now, we can definitely get a look at maybe some of the parts that they've added, just to see if that's an upgrade. So come on over.
Stayton, we'll have to FaceTime you in, and hopefully you get the game out there in Utah and Broncos country.
I will find a way.
Head to the Chiefs bar.
Yeah, don't incriminate yourself on this.
I am in Utah, sir. I don't know if they have very many bars here.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this season premiere of Chiefly Football. We are now being active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. That's probably it. I don't know. Stains.
You probably won't see anything on Snapchat. So let's just leave Snapchat out of this.
All right. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So give us a follow. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know if there's anything that you guys want us to discuss, or if there's something you guys disagree with us on. The best part of this is being able to interact with other Chiefs fans. So feel free to post, reach out to us. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk at you later.
Phenomenal, absolutely.